Hey guys, welcome back to the Vanished Lands. Beneath the endless storms of the Atlantic, rising like jagged teeth from the sea, there lies an island whispered about in fear and reverence. An island where monks vanish without a trace, where stairways climb into mist as if reaching for another world, and where the wind itself carries voices not of this earth. Some call it holy, others call it cursed, but all who set foot upon it agree. It is unlike any place on earth. This is the story of Skellig Michael, the island of silence and shadows, where history and myth blur into one, and where every answer only leads to deeper questions. The sea is a cruel storyteller. It whispers in foam, hides secrets in its depths, and sometimes, just sometimes, it reveals glimpses of places that feel more like dreams than land, off the ragged western coast of Ireland, where the Atlantic stretches out like an endless black mirror. There is such a place. It rises not with grace, but with defiance, a spear of stone that tears through the ocean's surface as if the earth itself clawed upward to escape the deep. They call it Skellig Michael. But long before it had a name, sailors spoke of it in hushed tones, as though even uttering its presence might draw a curse upon them. The island does not lie quietly like most. It looms, even when wrapped in mist, even when beaten by storms. Its jagged silhouette commands the horizon like a warning written in stone. To fishermen returning from their long voyages, it appeared suddenly, without explanation, a black tooth gnashing against the sky. Many believed it was not always there, that it rose and sank according to its own will, appearing only to those marked by fate. Some swore the island moved, that no matter how carefully maps were drawn, it shifted subtly from year to year, as though the ocean itself conspired to keep it hidden. In the taverns along the Irish coast, where salt still clung to the boots of men, stories of Skellig Michael were traded like dangerous currency. Some claimed the island was a resting place for angels, a stairway left half-finished by celestial hands. Others whispered of darker things, that was cursed, a fragment of the underworld hurled upward when the earth split in agony, doomed forever to float between the living and the dead. And always, at the center of these tales, was fear, not the simple fear of storms or drowning, but the deeper kind, the fear of standing at the edge of the known world and realizing that the unknown might be watching back. No one can say when the first sailor tried to set foot on Skellig Michael. What is certain is that not all who tried returned. Ships that approached too closely were swallowed by sudden squalls, the sea turning violent without warning. Some vessels were found days later, broken against the rocks. Others vanished entirely, as if the ocean had consumed them whole. Those who did return often spoke little of what they saw, their silence more haunting than any tale. But there was one thing they all agreed upon. The island did not welcome them. Even the name carries mystery. Skellig comes from the Irish word for splintered stone, while Michael was later attached as if to claim the island under divine protection. But this naming did little to tame it. For centuries it stood out there, a dark sentinel at the edge of maps, marked only with symbols of warning. For cartographers it was a headache, for storytellers a treasure, and for the sea itself, a secret refused to let go. Legends tell of storms gathering unnaturally around the island, like wolves circling prey. Sailors swore they had seen lightning strike its peaks again and again, as though the heavens themselves sought to shatter it. And yet it endured. Its spires remained sharp and cruel, resisting every attempt of wind and water to erode them. The ocean seemed to hate it, and yet the ocean could not conquer it, for those who glimpsed it in calmer weather. The vision was no less unsettling. The cliffs rose sheer from the water, giving no welcome, no gentle shore. Birds circled its heights, but even their cries sounded different here, sharper, harsher, as if echoing from some hollow cavern hidden within the rock. In the evening light, when the sun bled red into the sea, the island looked less like stone and more like a fortress cast in shadow, one not built by human hands. But perhaps the most unnerving thing about Skellig Michael was not its storms, nor its cliffs, nor the bones of wrecked ships that lay buried in its tidipools. It was a sense that it was not entirely empty. Sailors often spoke of shapes moving along its ridges, too distant to be birds, too deliberate to be tricks of light. At night, Some claim they saw fires flickering far above, as if someone or something kept vigil there. This led to whispers of guardians, of ancient monks who had long since abandoned the world of men to seek something purer, something beyond mortal understanding. And yet, even the monks were said to vanish into the mist, leaving behind only their stone huts and unanswered questions. The people of the mainland gave the island many names over centuries. Some called it the Needle of God. Others, less reverent, called it the Devil's Fawn. Children were warned never to point at it, lest it notice them in return. And when storms tore fishermen from their boats, families often muttered that Skellig Michael had claimed another soul. Still, there were always the curious, the ones who could not resist the pull of the forbidden. Every generation seemed to produce one or two who swore they would reach it, who believed they could uncover its secrets. They armed themselves with boats, ropes, and stubborn courage. Some succeeded in reaching the base, clinging to the wet stone like insects. But the climb was treacherous, and the sea never far behind. More than a few fell, their bodies dashed against the rocks, their cries lost beneath the roar of waves. Those who returned told strange stories. They spoke of stairways carved directly into cliffs, impossibly steep and weathered but unmistakably crafted by human hands. Who had built them, and when? The island was a fortress of stone, unyielding all but the most determined. To carve such steps seemed beyond reason. And yet, there they were, spiraling upward into clouds, vanishing into mist as though leading to another world. And it is here the greatest mystery begins. For while the island may appear lifeless, a jagged skeleton of rock, it is anything but. Those steps led to dwellings small, stone-built beehive huts clinging to the mountaintop. Their walls were thick, their construction clever, designed to withstand centuries of storms. But they gave no answers. Who lived here, so far from the rest of the world? And more importantly, why? The more one hears of Skellig Michael, the more it feels less like a place and more like a paradox. It is both real and unreal, tangible and dreamlike. It defies the rules of geography and challenges the limits of human endurance. It is the kind of place that makes a man question whether he has stumbled upon holy ground or cursed earth. And perhaps it is both. Even today, with photographs and films capturing its likeness, there is something about Skellig Michael that resists explanation. Its image can be studied, its location mapped, but the feeling, the heavy weight of awe and unease that presses on chest when one beholds it, cannot be captured. It is as if the island exists not just in space, but in some deeper layer of reality, one where myth and truth bleed together. And so the question lingers, echoing across time. Was this island ever meant for human eyes? Or is it one of those rare places where the veil between worlds thins, where men may look upon it briefly before being pulled back to safety, or dragged across forever? What lies beyond the horizon, upon those jagged peaks and silent stones? The answer is not yet given, but the sea still tells its story, one wave at a time, daring those who listen to draw closer, knowing full well that the closer they come, the more likely they are never to return. The sea rages endlessly around Skellig Michael, but centuries ago, men of faith dared to defy it. They were not warriors, nor kings, nor sailors. They were monks, humble and unarmed, carrying only their scriptures, their prayers, and their unshakable belief that silence could bring them closer to God. On the mainland, their world was one of villages, stone churches, and fields of green. Yet to these monks, the mainland was too loud, too filled with distraction, too tangled in the snares of earthly temptation. They sought something greater, something beyond the reach of men, and their endless wars, their endless hungers. And so, their eyes turned outward to the horizon, where the sea swallowed all things and where, above the storm's edge, jagged spires toward the sky. Skellig Michael. To most, it was a place of danger. To them, it was the edge of heaven. Their journey was not the march of an army, but the trembling crossing of a handful of boats. The sea fought them every step. Waves towered like walls. Winds threatened to tear their sails to shreds. Some turned back, their courage drowned in salt water. But a chosen few pressed on, clinging to the hope that beyond the storm lay silence. When their boat struck the base of the island, they must have felt they had landed not upon earth, but upon some broken shard of another world. The cliffs rose sheer, impossible to scale, jagged as spears, wet with the spray of the sea. The gulls wheeled above, their cries like laughter at the folly of men who dared set foot there. And yet the monks began to climb. Hands raw against stone, robes heavy with seawater, they pulled themselves upward, inch by inch, higher into the mist. No path guided them then, no carved stair. It was only the stubborn fire of faith that drove them higher, until finally they reached a ledge. From that ledge, the island opened before them like a revelation. Imagine their silence as they looked upon it. A barren spine of rock, swept by wind, devoid of trees, devoid of soil, a place where even life itself seemed to hesitate. Yet where others would see desolation, they saw purity. The world had no foothold here. The island belonged to no king, no tribe, no chieftain. It belonged only to God, or to whatever force kept it alive against the rage of the sea. And so they claimed it not with swords, but with prayer. The first days must have been agony. With no soil to grow crops, they scraped in garden from patches of earth. Coaxing vegetables from the rock, they gathered rainwater in carved basins. Fish from the sea became their bread, birds their occasional feast. Every step was a battle against nature's indifference. Yet with every sunrise, as light broke over the endless sea, they believed they stood closer to the divine. And then came the building. For what is faith without endurance? With bare hands and primitive tools, they began to carve the island itself. From its steep face, they shaped stairways, 600 steps, spiraling upward, defying reason. Each stone was set without mortar, placed so carefully, so perfectly balanced, that even now, centuries later, the steps endure against storms that have shattered ships and kingdoms alike. Higher and higher they built, not seeking comfort, but seeking distance, for the higher they climbed, the further they left the world behind. At last, upon a narrow ridge near the peak, they raised their refuge, a cluster of stone huts, round as hives, their domed roofs curved against the sky. These beehive dwellings were not homes in the earthly sense. They were cocoons of prayer, shelters where the body bent in hunger and cold, so that the soul might stretch upward into eternity. To enter one of these huts was to enter another rhythm of time, where the sound of wave below became a consonant, and silence itself became a language. The question lingers: what drove them here? What hunger for silence, what thirst for holiness, could lead men to abandon the warmth of villages, the safety of walls, the company of fellow men, to live where even gulls fear to nest? Some say it was penance, others say it was devotion, perhaps it was both. But there are whispers, too, of something deeper, something older, that the monks were not the first to know the island, that they felt drawn there, as if summoned by a voice that spoke not to their ears but to their souls. Life on Skellig Michael was no simple trial. Winters were cruel. Winds tore across the heights, and waves crashed endlessly below. Crops withered, supplies dwindled. Disease had no mercy here, and hunger visited often. Many did not survive the first years. Their bones lie hidden somewhere among the stones, nameless and unmarked, part of the island's silence. Yet those who endured grew into something unrecognizable. They became as much a part of the rock as the gulls in the grass, their faces weathered by salt and sun, their eyes filled with something both fierce and serene. Visitors who braved the crossing and lived to tell it spoke of the monks with awe. They described men who seemed carved from stone, their voices low, their movements deliberate, their presence unsettling. Some swore the monks' chants carried strange harmonies, as though joined by unseen choirs. Others whispered that the monks knew things they should not, that they spoke of storms before they arrived, that they lit fires which burned blue instead of red. And always there was a question: were these men closer to God, or had they crossed into something else entirely? For the island itself seemed to answer them. The steps they carved endured beyond reason. The huts resisted centuries of storms. Fires lit within their walls burned steady despite the winds. Was it simply skill, or was there something in the stone itself, some secret woven into the island before time began? The monks never explained. They simply lived, prayed, and endured as if the silence between the waves was answer enough. But silence does not mean peace. Not always. The Atlantic is a restless neighbor. Ships still vanish near the island. Fishermen who watch from afar claim that lights flickered upon the peak at night, moving too swiftly to be torches, too high to be fires. Some said the monks kept watch for angels. Others believed they were keeping something in, something the sea itself had tried to bury, but which men, in their hunger for holiness, had awakened. It is easy to romanticize their devotion, yet imagine the toll. Year after year, storm after storm, hunger after hunger. To live where the gulls feared and nest is to live where death is always near. And yet they stayed. They stayed through generations, through famines and wars on the mainland, through plague and invasion, untouched by the chaos of kings and armies. The world turned, empires rose and fell, but the monks of Skellig Michael endured in their silence, perched on a spine of stone between heaven and earth. Perhaps they believed the harsher the trial, the greater the glory. Perhaps they believed suffering here would purchase salvation beyond. Or perhaps, deep within their solitude, they found something the rest of the world had forgotten, that in silence, the universe itself speaks. The question remains, a haunting one. What faith drives men to abandon the world and live where even gulls fear to nest? Was it faith in God or faith in silence itself? Was it penance for sins too great to speak? Or was it hope for visions too great to share? We cannot know, for the monks left behind no explanations, only stones, only steps, only silence. Yet their presence lingers. To this day, those who climb the ancient stairways feel it. A hush falls over them, even amid the cries of seabirds, even amid the roar of the sea. It is as if the island remembers, as if the prayers spoken there still echo, carried on the wind, etched into the rock. And perhaps that is a true mystery. That men who sought to escape the world left behind something that binds the world still. Their ascent was not just up a cliff, but into the unknown, and the silence they claimed was not silence at all, but a voice waiting to be heard. The Atlantic has always been a place of sound. The crash of waves, the shriek of gulls, the groan of ships battered by storm. Yet around Skellig Michael, sound is different. It is sharper, stranger, filled with echoes that seem to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The monks who once lived there believed silence was sacred, but silence is never perfect. On this island, it is broken by whispers. Travelers, pilgrims, and sailors all tell the same tale. At night, when the wind sweeps across the jagged spires, it does not roar, it sings. It carries voices, low at first, like the murmur of prayer drifting through stone walls, then rising, weaving together into chants that seem too measured, too deliberate, to be the accident of wind. Some who hear it fall to their knees, believing angels still keep vigil on the rocks. Others shudder, certain that the voices do not belong to heaven at all. The monks built their stone huts to last. Their beehive cells stand still today, their domes curved against the sky. But long after the last monk left, people swore they heard chants echoing from within them, hollow voices that rolled like smoke through the passageways, filling the stairways with sound though no man remained inside. Fishermen drifting too close at night would row hard for the mainland, crossing themselves again and again, whispering that the dead still prayed there. But there are older stories too, stories that cannot be traced to Christianity, stories that belong to a time before the monks, before the island had its name. Local legends say the sea itself speaks around Skellig Michael, that its waves strike the cliffs not as water, but as words. Sailors swore they heard a language in the tide, a tongue older than Ireland, older than any human nation. Some believed it was the voice of the ocean, calling its lost children home. Others thought a warning, a curse wrapped in sound, a reminder that no man should linger too long near those jagged spires. And yet men lingered, because curiosity is as strong as fear. Pilgrims came to climb the steps, to kneel in the huts, to pray where the monks once prayed. They returned with stories of voices that did not belong to their own company. One pilgrim told of hearing his name carried in the wind, spoken in the voice of his dead mother. Another claimed he heard chanting not of monks, but of an army, as though legions long buried beneath the sea marched in endless prayer. Always, these stories return to the same question. Were these voices prayer or warning? The truth is, the island has always blurred the line between faith and fear. For the monks, the chants were sacred. They heard the wind and believed it carried the language of heaven. proof that their sacrifice was blessed. But to sailors, battered and exhausted, the sound was unbearable. To them it was not holy, but haunting, a reminder that man does not belong in the realm of storm and stone. There are accounts, scattered across centuries, of men who stayed too long upon Skellig Michael, who listened too closely. These men returned changed. Some grew silent, refusing to speak of what they had heard, their eyes always drifting back to the horizon as though waiting for something. Others raved in madness, muttering words that did not belong to any known language, rocking themselves as though still listening to voices that no one else could hear. One story tells of a monk who, after years of devotion, walked into the sea. His brothers found his sandals on the rocks. His staff laid neatly beside them, but his body was never recovered. They believed the voices had called him, and he had answered. Another tale speaks of fishermen who returned to shore half-mad, claiming he had heard the ocean tell him secrets of the future, wars, plagues, and deaths yet to come. Within weeks, he was dead, his final words muttered in a tongue no one understood. The wind is not just sound. It is movement, a thing alive, a force that creeps through cracks, slips beneath doors, curls around the ears of the sleeping. On Skellig Michael, it becomes something more. It bends a mind. Visitors speak of dreams filled with voices, dreams where the dead speak, where forgotten memories rise, where something vast and unseen waits in the darkness. They awake with tears on their faces, unable to say if what they felt was terror or wonder. Even the sea itself seems to join in, on nights when the moon shines silver upon the waves. Some claim to hear choirs rising from beneath the water, harmonies too perfect for men, voices too ancient for saints. There are whispers that the monks themselves knew the secret, that they did not build their huts only for prayer, but as listening chambers, places where the voices of the sea and sky could be heard most clearly. Perhaps they sought silence not to escape the world, but to hear what the world itself was trying to say. And what are those words? What meaning hides in the whispers? Some believe they are prayers left behind, echoes of devotion carved into the very stone by centuries of chanting. Others fear they are warnings, carried from the deep, reminders of an ancient catastrophe. For there are tales older still, tales of people who vanished into the sea, swallowed whole, their language drowned but not silenced. The wind remembers, the ocean remembers, and Skellig Michael speaks it back to those who dare to listen. There is a strangeness in this idea, that the island is not haunted by men, but by memory itself, that the stone and the waves hold voices like clay holds fingerprints, that when the wind passes, it awakens those imprints, and the island breathes with words older than human history. Yet what terrifies many is not the strangeness of sound, but the familiarity of it. Pilgrims often said the chants felt known, as though they had heard them in childhood dreams or in moments of near death, or in the spaces between waking and sleep. The voices spoke not to the ears, but to the heart, stirring something buried deep within. Perhaps that is why some fell to their knees in reverence, while others fled in terror. The sound did not reveal the island. It revealed the listener. Sailors who cursed the island swore that once you heard the whispers, you never truly escaped them. Even far inland, safe by the fire, they claimed the wind outside their window still carried faint echoes. They would wake in the night to the sound of chanting drifting through the trees, only to find no one there. Their families would whisper that the island had marked them, that Skellig Michael's voice had followed them home. It is a chilling thought that a place would follow a man, not with chains or storms, but with sound, that the whispers in the wind could nest in his mind, a shadow of a song that never fades. And perhaps this is a true curse of the island. Not death, not danger, but the lingering memory of voices that refuse to be forgotten. Today, tourists climb its steps, marvel at its huts, gaze at its views. They call it beautiful, awe-inspiring, otherworldly. But even now, when the sun sets and the wind rises, some return with faces pale and lips pressed tight. They say the island spoke to them. They say the wind carried voices that were not their own. Some laugh it off. Others do not. And so, the legend endures. At night, the wind carries voices. Pilgrims and sailors hear chants echoing from empty huts. Some believe it is the prayer of saints, still rising to heaven. Others believe it is the sea itself, calling out in a language older than Ireland, older than man. But what if it is both? What if the prayers of men and the cries of the sea have woven together across centuries until the wind itself cannot tell them apart? And what if, hidden within those whispers, is not just memory, but message? Not just prayer, but warning? The island waits in silence, but its silence is never empty. The wind speaks, and those who hear it are never quite the same again. The island was never meant to be empty. From the first moment men set eyes on Skellig Michael, they sensed that something else already claimed it. The monks carved their huts, prayed their prayers, endured their storms. But they were not alone. Legends say that something watched them, something that guarded the jagged stones and the silence they sought to inhabit. It was not human. Of that, all stories agree. The earliest whispers tell of shadows moving across the cliffs, winged shapes gliding just beyond sight. Some said they were great birds, larger than any eagle or gull, their wings blotting out the moonlight. But others swore that no bird flew like these, too silent, too deliberate, their movements circling always above the huts, never straying far, as it bound to the rock itself. Sailors who watched from the sea returned shaken, claiming the island was ringed with guardians, sentinels that tested every soul who dared approach. But not all shadows flew. Some walked. Pilgrims who braved the climb to the monastery told of a figure cloaked in white mist, appearing at dusk along the stairways. At times it seemed to drift rather than walk, its robes trailing like smoke, its face hidden. Always, it appeared just as the sun bled into the sea, when light and darkness fought their briefest battle. Some pilgrims said it guided them, urging them upward when their legs trembled and their hearts faltered. Others swore it blocked their path, standing still as stone until they turned back in fear. What it was, no one agreed. An angel, some said, keeping vigil over the holy men. A demon, others whispered, guarding its island jealously. A spirit older than both church and scripture, bound to the stone long before the monks ever arrived. Yet whatever name they gave it, all agreed on one truth. Those who mocked the tale rarely returned. The sea carried back bodies sometimes, broken on the rocks, faces pale, mouths frozen in a final cry. Fishermen pulled them ashore and muttered that they had angered the guardian, spoken lightly of things that should only be spoken in prayer. Even those who survived spoke with trembling lips, warning that the island was not theirs to claim, that a presence walked there which no man could master. The monks themselves rarely spoke of it. Their writings, scarce as they are, mention visions, trials, visitations. They describe nights when the wind stilled and the air grew heavy, when an unseen watcher pressed upon them until their knees buckled in fear. Some wrote of wrestling with temptation, of voices urging them to abandon their vows. Others wrote of comfort, of being lifted when their strength had gone, as though a hand unseen had steadied their path. Never did they give it a name. Perhaps they dared not. One story endures, passed through generations like a secret too heavy to carry yet too dangerous to lose. It tells of a young monk, filled with pride, who scoffed at the warnings. He declared that no spirit ruled him, that his prayers were stronger than any shadow. One evening, he climbed the steps alone, defying the fear that kept others close to their huts. The sun dipped low. The mist curled along the cliffs, and there, upon the ridge, the guardian appeared. Some said it stood taller than a man, cloaked in mist that glowed with its own light. Others swore it was formless, shifting like smoke in the wind. The monk lifted his hand, daring it, mocking it, and then he vanished. His brothers searched all night, calling his name. By morning, they found only his sandals at the cliff's edge. The sea below was calm, empty, waiting. From that day on, none of them mocked. The guardian was not always cruel. Some pilgrims told of moments when their strength gave way, when the climb became unbearable, and yet a figure appeared ahead of them, guiding them upward, its presence filling them with calm. They would reach the huts at last, trembling but alive, certain they had been led by something holy. Yet when they described their guide, the monks would only listen in silence, eyes downcast, lips pressed tight. For the monks had seen it too, and they knew its nature was not so simple. Was it angel or demon, protector or jailer? Perhaps it was all of these at once. Perhaps it was neither. Some believe it was the soul of the island itself, the living spirit of Skellig Michael, bound to its stones, watching over those who intruded. Others whispered that it was no spirit at all, but something from beyond the sea, drawn to the place as surely as the monks were. For there are tales, older than scripture, of beings that fell from the sky, beings that dwelled in light and mist, beings whose shadows stretched long over the earth. Could the guardian have been one of them? Lingering still in this place where land and ocean and heaven meet, there were signs beyond the figure itself. Lights flickered on the cliffs at night, blue and white, never red or gold like fire. Sometimes they glided along the stairways, as if lanterns were being carried by invisible hands. Other times they hovered above the huts, vanishing only when dawn touched the horizon. Some monks claimed these were heavenly lights, guiding them in prayer. Others lay awake trembling, certain that they were being watched, measured, judged. Birds, too, seemed to obey the guardian. Great flocks circled the island endlessly, their cries filling the air in patterns too precise to be chance. Pilgrims swore the gulls attacked those who mocked the island, diving at their heads until they fled in terror. Once, a group of warriors tried to raid the monastery, seeking gold or relics. They never reached the huts. A storm rose without warning, and the birds descended in a frenzy, driving them into the sea. None returned. The monks gave thanks to God, but in hushed whispers, some admitted they had seen the guardian that day, standing at the cliff's edge, its cloak billowing in the storm, watching as men drowned below. The guardian was not forgotten when the monks were gone. Fishermen centuries later still spoke of it. Their tales passed through families. Some claimed to see its misty form at dusk, standing upon the highest peak, staring out across the ocean as if waiting for something. Others swore that on moonless nights, great wings blotted out the stars, circling silently above the island before vanishing into clouds. Always it appeared at the edges of vision, never close, never clear, leaving only the shiver of fear upon the skin. And so the island's legend deepened. Skellig Michael was no longer only a place of prayer, nor a place of perilous seas. It became a place of guardianship. The monks were not its rulers, nor its keepers. They were only guests tolerated, watched, measured. The island belonged to something else, something that still lingers in the wind and the stone, something that decides who may climb its steps and who will be claimed by the sea. What fate drives men to live there, knowing they are not alone? Perhaps the monks believed the guardian was sent by God, a test of their devotion. Perhaps they believed it was a demon to be resisted, a shadow to strengthen their souls. Or perhaps they understood something greater, that the line between angel and demon is thin, and what watches us in the mist cannot be so easily named. Even now, tourists climb the steps, their cameras and boots clattering on stone, once walked in silence. They see the huts, the cliffs, the endless sea. They call it beautiful, awe-inspiring, like something from another world. But some return with more than photographs. They speak of unease, of shadows moving at the edge of their vision, of a figure glimpsed at dusk, watching, waiting. They laugh when they tell the story, but their laughter rings hollow. For when the sun sets and the mist curls low, who is to say what still walks the stairways of Skellig Michael? Perhaps the monks were never alone. Perhaps no one ever is. The guardian remains shrouded in mist, cloaked in silence, neither friend nor foe, but something older, something other. And those who dare mock, those who dismiss it as superstition, as shadows, as tricks of light, those are the ones who never return. There are places in the world where the earth itself seems to hold memory, where stone is not only stone but scripture carved in silence. On Skellig Michael, those memories are written not in words, but in steps, thousands of them, spiraling, twisting, rising higher and higher until they vanish into mist. Steps carved by hands long gone. Steps that have weathered centuries of storms and yet endure as though they were laid yesterday. They are known as the stairways of Skellig Michael, but among locals, they carry another name, the Forbidden Steps. No one knows who first carved them. Some say the monks, with patience that stretched across lifetimes, carved each stone to reach their beehive huts near the summit. Others insist the steps were already there, carved by a people older than history, a people who knew secrets now forgotten. For the steps are too many, too perfect, too precise. 601 path, spiraling around the cliffs, clean to stone where no foothold should exist. They wind upward like a serpent, defying gravity, defying reason. Even modern eyes, trained to marvel at engineering, look upon them with disbelief. And yet, the steps are not merely stone. That is what the legends say. They are alive. Fishermen tell of travelers who dare climb, only to vanish before reaching the summit. Their companions swore they slipped, yet no body was ever found, as though the sea itself swallowed them whole. Others say the steps shifted beneath their feet, widening, narrowing, leading them astray until they lost their footing. Locals whisper that the island judges every climber, and that those unworthy are taken not by accident, but by design. The monks spoke of the climb as a trial, a test of faith. To ascend the steps was to abandon the world below, to suffer fear and exhaustion, and to reach closer to heaven. But not all who attempted passed the test. Some collapsed along the path, their bodies claimed by storm. Others simply disappeared, never seen again. And in the silence of their huts, the monks spoke of this not as tragedy, but as inevitability. The steps themselves decided who belonged. There are stories told along the coast of Ireland of men who returned changed. One fisherman claimed to have climbed partway, but fled when he felt the steps tremble beneath him, as though alive. He returned home pale, his eyes hollow, and he spoke no more of the island until his death. Another tale tells of a pilgrim who reached the huts but descended a different path entirely, a path no one else could see. When he emerged on the shore, he was decades older than when he began. His family did not recognize him. His hair was white, his skin weathered like stone. He died within days, his last words muttered in a tongue no one understood. The forbidden steps hold more than danger. They hold mystery. Their very purpose is questioned. Why climb so high? To a place where no crops grow, where no animals dwell, where the cold bites harder with every step. Why not build lower, where the sea offers fish, where the land offers some shelter? Why endure such hardship, unless the height itself held meaning? Some believe the monks sought closeness to God. Others suspect they sought something else, something that lingered at the island's peak, something that could only be reached by those who endured the climb. And yet, the climb is not only physical. Many who attempt to describe a strangeness in the air, as though each step pulls them deeper into another realm. The wind changes. The sea below seems to fade. Sounds grow distorted, distant. The world narrows until there is only the stone beneath their feet and the mist ahead. Some call it exhaustion. Others call it vision. But all agree, the higher one climbs, the further one drifts in the ordinary world. The monks themselves left little record, but fragments remain. They wrote of seeing lights upon the steps at night, blue flames that guided or misled. They wrote of hearing voices behind them, footsteps that followed though no one was there. Some even wrote of meeting figures along the stairways, cloaked in mist, silent, neither blessing nor cursing, only watching as they passed. To climb the steps was to walk not only through stone, but through mystery itself. Legends say the steps were not built for men at all. Some claim they were a ladder for the gods, a pathway for beings who once descended from the heavens. The monks, in their devotion, merely repurposed what was already there, mistaking an ancient stairway of the divine for their own labor. Others whispered darker things, that the steps lead not upward to heaven, but downward to something hidden, that the climb is only the beginning, and that those who reach the summit are not at the end, but at the threshold of something far older and far more dangerous. Children in coastal villages were once warned, never count the steps. For those who tried, the number always changed. Some said 600, others more, others less. Those who returned swore the island punished those who sought to measure it, as though the stairway itself resented being known. One boy, foolish and curious, attempted it. He returned fevered, muttering numbers that made no sense, unable to stop, unable to sleep. He wasted away within weeks, his lips still counting as his breath failed. The forbidden steps also hold a strange beauty. At dawn, when the sun rises and the sea glitters below, the stairway gleams with light, each stone glowing as though polished. Pilgrims described it as walking upon a road of stars, a path suspended between ocean and sky. Many wept as they climbed, overcome not by fear but by wonder, certain they were stepping upon holy ground. And yet, wonder and terror are often two faces of the same coin. For just as the steps can inspire awe, they could also betray. A sailor once told of climbing in clear weather, but halfway up, the air turned thick, the mist curling so dense he could not see his own hands. He heard the sea no longer. He heard only whispers, voices urging him higher. But when he lifted his foot, the step was gone. He fell, tumbling into nothingness, only to awaken at the base, uninjured, as though the island itself had spat him back. He fled and never returned, but his story spread, a warning that the steps do not always lead where one expects. Why do they lead so high? Why climb beyond reason, beyond safety? To the peak where stone huts cling like nests on a cliff. Perhaps the answer lies not in the steps themselves, but in those who dare to build or discover them. For those monks believed height was purity, that the closer they stood to the sky, the closer they stood to eternity. And yet, their choice may not have been theirs alone. Perhaps the island compelled them. Perhaps the stairway demanded to be climbed. Even today, the steps remain. Tourists walk them, their boots clattering on ancient stone. Guides warn them to hold fast, for the wind is merciless and the drop unforgiving. Some laugh, some marvel, but a few return shaken. They speak of dizziness not from exertion, but from something deeper. They swear the steps shifted beneath their feet, that the path twisted subtly, leading them toward the edge. They felt watched, measured, weighed. And when they reached the huts, they felt no triumph, only silence pressing upon them, heavy as stone. The forbidden steps endure, older than kings, older than empires, older perhaps than memory itself. Each one carries a story, each one a question, each one a mystery carved into the spine of the earth. To climb them is to test not only the body, but the soul. Some ascend and return, others do not. And no one can say for certain why they lead so high, higher than any human dwelling should stand. Perhaps they lead not upward, but elsewhere. On Skellig Michael, the stones themselves seem to breathe. Every hut, every stair, every weathered wall feels older than the sea winds that tear across the cliffs. But some say not every stone has been seen, not every chamber opened. For hidden among the ruins, tucked behind walls and cloaked in silence, there are whispers of something else, a secret chamber. The tale begins with explorers. Centuries after the monks had gone, they came searching for history, for relics, for proof of the faith that once clung to this jagged island. What they found was stranger than scripture. One group claimed to discover a sealed passage among the huts, a wall that seemed different from the rest. Its stones were tighter, smoother, fitted not with the rough hand of a monk, but with precision that unsettled the eye. It was as though the wall itself was trying too hard to disappear, to hide what lay beyond. Curiosity is a dangerous companion. The explorers pried at the stones, forcing them loose until the hidden entrance groaned open. Behind it stretched a passage choked with dust and silence, untouched for centuries, perhaps longer. They entered with torches, their light flickering against walls that seemed to drink it in. And there, upon those walls, they saw the first marks, runes, symbols carved deep into the stone, etched with a hand both careful and deliberate. Yet they were unlike any script known to Ireland. They were not Ogham, nor Latin, nor any alphabet the scholars of the mainland recognized. Their lines curved and spiraled, intersecting in patterns that seemed less like writing and more like maps or equations, or prayers written in a language not of men. Stranger still, when the torchlight touched them, they seemed to glow faintly, as though the stone remembered light even after centuries of darkness. The men who found them argued endlessly. Some swore they were the work of the monks. Secret codes of devotion, mystical inscriptions meant to guard the soul. Others scoffed, declaring that the monks had no knowledge of such symbols, that these carvings belonged to someone older, someone forgotten. But the more they studied, the more the mystery deepened. For the runes did not stop at the walls. They stretched across the floor, curved onto the ceiling, flowed together like veins, as though the entire chamber was one vast design. What did it mean? That question remains unanswered. Some said it was scripture in an unknown tongue. Others said it was a map of the stars, the chamber itself a kind of observatory carved into the rock. Still others whispered that it was neither language nor map, but a lock, a mechanism waiting to be understood, guarding something hidden deeper within. And here the story takes its turn into shadow. For those who studied the runes for too long were not left unchanged. Accounts tell of one scholar who, after weeks examining the carvings, began to dream of the sea, not as water, but as endless darkness filled with lights like stars. He woke screaming in a language his companions could not understand, his hands clawing at the walls as though trying to enter them. Another man, braver or more foolish, traced the runes with his fingers. He claimed the stone hummed beneath his touch, a vibration that passed into his bones. That night, he swore he heard voices rising from the chamber, chanting in harmony with the waves outside. By morning, he was gone. His torch was found still burning, his notes left scattered, but of the man there was no trace. The locals had warned them. The villagers along the coast always spoke of secrets buried in the stone. They told tales of monks who built walls not only to shelter from the wind, but to conceal things no one should see. They said the island had always drawn seekers, and not all who came were holy. Some sought knowledge, some sought power, and those who carved the first symbols into the chamber did not leave by choice. The island kept them. The chamber itself is said to be small, yet endless. Some explorers claim to measure the walls and find one length by day, another by night. The floor seemed to shift, the angles never quite aligning. In torchlight, the runes seemed to writhe, twisting when the eye drifted away. One man swore that when his torch guttered, the symbols flared brighter, as though feeding on the darkness. None stayed long enough to test the truth. Fear is a stronger master than curiosity. Scholars on the mainland argued furiously when they heard these tales. Some dismissed them as fable, born of tired eyes and frightened minds. Others demanded proof. Sketches of the runes, samples of the stone. A few, more daring, attempted the journey themselves. Some returned, bringing with them fragments of inscription, charcoal rubbings of symbols no one could read. But others never returned at all. Their boats were found drifting, empty, their oars gone, their supplies untouched. The sea gave no answers. And so the chamber became more than legend. It became a question. Who carved those runes? Were they truly monks, scratching symbols of devotion in the dark? Or was it a civilization forgotten, older than Ireland, older than history itself? Some whispered that the island was once a temple, a place where the sky met the sea, where men spoke to beings not of this world. The chamber, then, was not a cell of prayer, but a vault of memory, a place built to hold something too great or too dangerous to release. The glowing runes fed such speculation. Some insisted they were natural, a trick of the stone. Others swore they were alchemical, infused with minerals unknown. But there were those who spoke of stranger things, that the glow was not of earth, but the stars, captured in stone, humming still with a power that belonged not to monks or men, but to the heavens themselves. And here is the thought that chills the heart. What if the chamber is not history at all, but prophecy? What if the runes are not records of the past, but warnings for the future? Some fragments brought back spoke of cycles, of returns, of doors that open only when the sea and sky align. The monks may have sealed the chamber not to protect their secrets, but to protect the world from what they found. Those who believe this point to the silence of the monks, their refusal to speak openly of what they endured. They built their huts high, closer to the sky, yet sealed away the chamber deep within the stone. Why? Unless they feared what it contained. Unless they knew that silence was the only barrier left between the world of men and something waiting in the dark. To this day, no one can say for certain if the chamber still exists. Some explorers claim it collapsed, buried by storms and time. Others swear it remains, hidden, waiting, its runes glowing faintly in the dark, untouched by centuries. The island guards its secrets well. It always has. But those who climb the steps still speak of it. They say that when the wind stills and the sea grows quiet, you can hear a hum beneath your feet, faint but steady, like the heartbeat of stone. They say that if you touch the walls of the huts in the right place, you can feel vibrations, as though something stirs behind them. And they say that at night, when the moon is high, the mist glows faintly in places it should not, tracing patterns across the stone like the runes of the chamber hidden beneath. So is it prayer or warning? Were the runes a devotion of monks? desperate to capture the divine in lines of stone? Or were they the language of something older, something not human, leaving its mark for those brave or foolish enough to seek it? We may never know, but the island knows, and it remembers. For Skellig Michael is not merely stone. It is story, it is silence, it is secret. And somewhere in its heart, sealed away in darkness, lies a chamber that does not belong to monks, nor to kings, nor to men at all. It belongs to the island, and the island is not finished speaking. There are storms, and then there are storms that erase the world. On the western edge of Ireland, where the Atlantic rules without mercy, where there is not merely wind and rain, it is a living force. It howls, it crushes, it consumes. And for those who lived upon Skellig Michael, storms were more than danger. They were isolation. They were prison walls built of cloud and sea, closing off the monks from the rest of mankind. The chronicles speak of one storm above all others, a storm that swallowed the island for weeks. The waves rose like mountains, hammering against the jagged cliffs. Lightning split the sky again and again, until the world was a strobe of fire and shadow. The monks huddled in their beehive huts, their stone walls trembling with every crash of thunder, their prayers carried away by the endless roar. No boats could reach them. No birds dared circle peaks. The mainlanders who watched from shore said the island had vanished. Shrouded in darkness, erased from sight, it was as if Skellig Michael itself had been dragged into another world, sealed away by a tempest too vast to be natural. When the storm at last broke, when the sea calmed and the sky cleared, boats finally dared across the waters. The villagers who rowed out expected to find the monks weakened but alive, their faces hollow from hunger, their bodies gone from fasting, but their orders still intact. Instead, what they found was silence. Half the monks were gone. No bodies, no graves, no blood, no sign of struggle, only absence. The huts stood open, their stone doors pushed wide, swinging in the wind. Inside, bowls of food still rested upon the ground, abandoned mid-meal. Loaves of bread hardened where they sat. Fish lay uneaten. Jugs of water remained full. It was as if the men had risen in the middle of supper and walked out into the storm without hesitation, never to return. The surviving monks would not speak of it. Their eyes were hollow, their lips pressed tightly, their hands trembling as they clutched their rosaries. When pressed, they muttered only of the storm and then fell silent. Not one could explain where their brothers had gone or why the island seemed emptier, colder, as though something essential had been carved from it. The villagers whispered among themselves. Had the monks been taken by the sea? Had a wave carried them from the cliffs, devouring them whole? It would explain the absence of bodies. Yet the others shook their heads. Men do not abandon their meals to leap willingly into the waves, nor do half a dozen men vanish together, silently, leaving their brother behind. Something had happened on Skellig Michael, something the survivors dared not speak. Legends quickly grew. Some claimed the storm itself had taken them, that the clouds were not clouds but wings, and that the thunder was not thunder but the sound of great beings descending. Others whispered of lights seen above the island during the storm. Strange blue flares flickering across the peaks, like lanterns moving against a gale. Fishermen swore they had seen figures upon the cliffs, tall and indistinct, watching through the tempest with eyes that glowed. The most unsettling tale came from one of the surviving monks, who in his old age spoke at last of what he remembered. He said the storm was not merely wind and rain, but voice. He swore he heard chanting carried within a roar, a deep chorus rising from the sea, not in Latin, not in Gaelic, but in a language that bent the mind to hear. The missing monks, he claimed, heard it too. They rose, one by one, as if entranced, their eyes fixed on the darkness outside. He tried to hold them back, tried to speak, but they would not listen. They walked into the storm, vanishing into the mist, following the voices as if summoned. And then, he said, there was silence. He never saw them again. Scholars dismissed this account, calling it the rambling of an old man haunted by grief. But among the villagers, the tale grew into certainty. The storm had not taken the monks by chance. It had come for them. Something within the storm had called, and they had answered. And the most chilling part of the story is this: They did not resist. Imagine the terror of those who remained, listening as their brothers abandoned them, hearing footsteps vanish into thunder, doors left open to the wind. Imagine the silence after the half-empty huts, the unanswered prayers. To survive such a storm was already a trial. To survive it with half your order missing, with no grave to mourn, with no explanation to speak. That is a wound deeper than hunger or cold. What faith could endure such a test? Even centuries later, the story endures. Tourists who visit the huts still feel it, a heaviness in the air, as if the island remembers what was taken. Some claim they hear footsteps outside at night, though no one walks the paths. Others swear the huts feel crowded, as though unseen brothers still sit within them, waiting for a meal that will never be finished. Sailors, too, tell of storms that gather suddenly around the island, storms that last longer than any elsewhere on the coast. They whisper that the missing monks walk still, half human, half shadow, their chants woven into wind, calling others to join them. A few even claim to have seen them. Figures cloaked in mist, their faces hidden, their footsteps silent as they move along the forbidden steps, vanishing into the sea when dawn breaks. The monks themselves never rebuilt their numbers. The order lingered, yes, but it was never whole again. It was as if the island itself had claimed what it desired, and no man dared to replace what had been taken. The survivors lived out their days in silence, their prayers quiet, their eyes fixed always on the sea, as though expecting their brothers to return at any moment. But they never did. The mystery remains unsolved. Were the monks swallowed by the storm, taken by the sea, led by visions, or did something far stranger occur, something beyond our understanding, something that walks between weather and silence, something that chooses who may stay and who must go? The story of the time of darkness lingers like the storm itself. It begins with thunder, rises in terror, and ends in silence. And those centuries have passed, though the huts now stand empty and the order is gone. The question remains, what happened to the missing monks of Skellig Michael? And perhaps more haunting still, could it happen again? There are places on earth where the sky feels closer, where the veil between heaven and stone seems unbearably thin. Skellig Michael is one such place. To stand upon its cliffs at night, surrounded by endless sea, is to feel the weight of the stars pressing down. The Atlantic vanishes into blackness, and above, the heavens burn bright, their lights sharper, nearer, alive. It was here, the old stories say, that the heavens touched the earth. Fishermen told of nights when streaks of fire cut across the sky, great trails of light plunging toward the island. They said the stars fell there, burning briefly before vanishing into the rock. Some swore they saw them strike the peak itself, flaring like torches upon the jagged spires before fading into silence. These were no ordinary meteors, they claimed. They were too slow, too deliberate, too alive. The monks, cloistered in their stone huts, witnessed these lights too. They rode of fiery wheels rolling across the heavens, of figures descending clothed in brilliance, of voices like thunder woven with song. Some call them visions, others miracles, but the words they left behind are unsettling, filled not only with reverence but without tinged by fear. What were these fiery wheels, these beings of light? Saints, said the faithful. Angels, sent to test and comfort the brothers who lived so far from the world of men. Yet others whispered of stranger possibilities, that what descended upon Skellig Michael was not a heaven, but of something far older, something neither holy nor profane, but entirely other. Consider the setting. An island at the edge of the known world, a monastery clinging to cliffs where no man should live, and above it, skies filled with lights that move against the stars. It was a perfect place for mystery, and the records left behind are too strange to dismiss. One monk described a wheel of flame that hovered above the peak, spinning with sparks that fell into the sea. He claimed the water hissed and boiled where the sparks touched it, and that the birds refused to fly for days after. Another wrote of a figure descending in the night, radiant as fire yet shaped like a man, who stood upon the stairway and raised a hand in silence before vanishing in a flash of light. To the monks, these visions were both gift and trial. They strengthened their devotion, but also filled them with dread. For if these were angels, why did they come not with words of comfort? but in silence, in fire, in visions that sear the mind. And if they were not angels, then what were they? The villagers on the mainland offered their own explanations. Some said the island was cursed, a place where the sky itself bled fire. Others believed it was blessed, that the lights were signs of holiness, proof that the monks dwelled upon holy ground. A few whispered older tales, darker ones, of gods who fell from the stars in ages past, bringing both knowledge and ruin. Perhaps, they said, those gods had never left. Even in later centuries, sailors reported strange phenomena around Skellig Michael. They told of lights circling the peak, glowing blue and white, moving against the wind. Some swore they followed their ships, hovering silently above the waves, before vanishing into the sea with no splash. Others spoke of sudden bursts of radiance that blinded their eyes, leaving them adrift in darkness, unsure direction until the dawn returned. The line between heaven and earth has always been thin here, but on nights when the stars burn brightest, it seems to vanish entirely. Imagine the fear of those monks, alone in their stone cells, the storm raging outside, the sea crashing below, and above, fire moving to the sky like living thought. Imagine their prayers, desperate, uncertain, not knowing whether to kneel in worship or flee in terror. For when heaven descends, it is never gentle. Some scholars argue these visions were meteors, auroras, or tricks of the mind caused by hunger and exhaustion. Others point to the strange consistency of the accounts. The wheels, the beings of light, the silence that followed. Could so many men, across so many years, all see the same visions by chance? Or was something truly there? Something that came not once but many times, drawn to the island as surely as the monks themselves? And here lies the deepest mystery. Why Skellig Michael? The sea is vast, the world is wide. Yet again and again the lights came here, to this narrow peak rising from the Atlantic. Was it chance, or was there something about the island itself that called them down? Some whispered runes found in hidden chambers speak of the sky, of patterns traced in stone that mirror the constellations above. Perhaps the island was always a beacon, a place where heaven and earth meet, a landing ground for things that do not belong entirely to either. The monks themselves seemed to believe so. Their prayers grew more urgent after each vision. They fasted, they built higher, they carved steps that spiraled ever closer to the peak, as though trying to reach what descended there. But the visions never spoke, never lingered. They came in fire, they vanished in silence, leaving only wonder and terror behind. There are tales, too, of disappearance. One monk, they say, claimed to see a wheel of fire descend in the night. He rose from his bed, left his hut, and walked into the mist. His brothers followed, but when they reached the cliffs, he was gone. Only the smell of smoke lingered in the air, and a strange light shimmered upon the water before fading into darkness. The sea remembers. Fishermen swore that, years later, they saw a figure standing upon the waves near the island, cloaked in light, hands raised as though in blessing or warning. They rowed hard for shore, too afraid to look back. And so the legend endures. The star and the sea, the heaven and the earth, touching upon Skellig Michael in fire and silence. Were they saints, as the faithful believe, come to guide men who had chosen exile at the edge of the world? Or were they something else, something far stranger, drawn not by faith but by the stone itself, by the island's strange gravity that pulls both men and mysteries alike? Even now, in the modern age, there are reports. Visitors speak of strange lights above the island, glowing orbs that dance in the night sky before vanishing into the waves. Some call them illusions, tricks of atmosphere and cloud. Others call them exactly what the old monks did, visions. And once again, the question rises. Visions of what? The star and the sea, heaven and earth. Skellig Michael stand between them, waiting as it always has. By the 13th century, the island of Skellig Michael stood as it always had. A jagged crown of stone rising from the Atlantic, battered by waves, cloaked in mist, silent yet unyielding. For centuries, monks had clung to it, building their huts, carving their stairways, living lives of prayer and hardship at the very edge of existence. Their order seemed eternal as the stone itself. Yet, by the close of that century, they were gone. No farewell was written. No last prayer was recorded. They left no graves, no testament. No final words to the world they abandoned. The monastery, once alive with chants that rose against the roar of the sea, was left to gulls and the wind. The order had vanished. Why? That question has haunted history ever since. Some say it was simple necessity. The climate was changing. Storms grew harsher. Winters colder. The sea more violent than before. Famine struck the mainland, and raiders prowled the coasts. Perhaps the monks could endure no longer. Perhaps they fled to the safer grounds of the mainland, settling among other communities where food could be gathered, where walls offered protection, where survival was less uncertain. But this explanation, though practical, never satisfies. For these were men who had chosen hardship from the start, who had sought exile from the world, who had endured storms and starvation before without abandoning their post. What force, then, could drive them to leave behind the silence they had once called eternity? The villagers offered darker answers. They whispered that the monks had been taken by the sea, some said. For there are stories of entire groups vanishing into storms, their huts left as though frozen in time, their meals untouched. The sea, jealous of those who dared defy it, had claimed them all at once. Others whispered that it was not the sea but the sky, that the fiery wheels and beings of light the monks once recorded had returned, and this time they had not come to give visions but to take the faithful away. But the most haunting tale of all is that the monks did not leave the island at all. They simply disappeared within it. Fishermen who visited in the years after the abandonment swore the huts felt strangely alive, as though still occupied. Some claimed they heard chanting carried on the wind, the voices of monks who were no longer there. Others spoke of shadows moving along the stairways, figures cloaked in robes who vanished when approached. The island seemed to hold echoes of the order, as if the stone itself remembered them, or perhaps, as some believed, they had never truly left. The few written accounts that survive from that era are sparse but chilling. One record mentions the monastery being strangely forsaken yet not empty. Another describes the huts as if awaiting their keeper's return, though centuries may pass. Such words have fueled speculation that the monks did not abandon their sacred refuge willingly, but were drawn into something beyond. And here enters the legend of the secret chamber once more. Some believe the monks uncovered knowledge they should not have, hidden within the stone of the island itself. The glowing runes, the strange inscriptions, the visions of fire descending from the sky. Perhaps these mysteries grew too great, too dangerous. Perhaps the monks entered that chamber and never returned, swallowed not by sea or storm, but by the very silence they had once worshipped. One story tells of the last abbot, a man said to be devout beyond measure, who began to lead his brothers in rituals not of Rome, not of the church, but of something else. They chanted not only scripture, but sounds that echoed the voices they had heard in the wind. Syllables not of their tongue, but older, stranger. The villagers who came with supplies grew afraid, claiming the monks' eyes shone unnaturally, their faces thin and radiant with something not of this world. Then one year, the boats came and found no one at all. Others offer a simpler, though no less chilling, explanation: despair. After centuries of exile, of hunger, of endless storms, perhaps the monks lost their will. Perhaps one by one they walked into the sea, seeking release, leaving only their huts behind. But if this were so, why was there no trace? No sandals, no staffs, no bones upon the rocks? Silence alone cannot erase so completely. The disappearance became more than mystery. It became curse. For in the centuries that followed, those who visited the island often felt it. The weight of absence, the sense that something was missing, not only men, but meaning. Pilgrims who climbed the steps claimed the huts felt unfinished, as though their inhabitants had only just stepped outside and might return at any moment. Some heard chanting in the night, echoing across the cliffs though no monk remained. Others swore the huts were warmer inside than the wind should allow, as if bodies had only recently left. Even now, historians debate, did the order migrate to the mainland monastery at Skellig, seeking safety? Did they die in famine, their memories swallowed by time? Or did they vanish into something stranger? Drawn by the very mysteries they had come seeking, the disappearance of the order lingers like a wound upon the island, a silence deeper than silence. For what makes the tale so haunting is not only that they left, but that no one knows how. Men devoted to eternity do not abandon it easily. Men who endure storms and hunger for generations do not surrender suddenly. Something changed, something shifted, and whatever it was, it left no trace but emptiness. The stone huts remain, clinging to the peak. Their domes curve against the sky, their interiors bare. The steps remain, spiraling upward into mist. The island remains, waiting silent, as though holding its breath. But the monks are gone and their voices have joined the sea. Some say they achieved what they sought, that in their silence, they found eternity, not in heaven, not in earth, but in the space between. Others whisper they were taken, absorbed into the very mystery of the island, transformed into something we cannot name. And so the question lingers, unanswered, echoing across centuries. What drove men who sought eternity in silence to abandon their sacred refuge? Was it hunger? Was it fear? Was it revelation? Or was it something else entirely? Something still hidden in the stone huts, silent as the sea? The island does not say. It waits. It watches. It remembers. And perhaps, if one listens long enough, the monks' voices may yet be heard, carried in the wind, warning or welcoming those who dare to climb the forbidden steps. There are places in the world where reality does not feel fixed, where the mind betrays the eyes and the earth itself seems to shift beneath one's feet. Skellig Michael is one of those places. For centuries, men have spoken of its storms, its stairways, its strange guardians. But the island holds another secret, one more subtle yet no less terrifying. Illusion. Modern visitors, climbing the steep steps carved into the cliffs, often speak of dizziness, of the ground tilting beneath them though the stone never moves. Some describe the sense of walking in circles, of climbing endlessly without reaching the top. Others feel as though they've been here before, every stone familiar, every turn remembered, though it is their first visit. Deja vu clings to the air, heavy as mist. And then there are the visions. Hikers tell of seeing figures ahead of them, monks cloaked in brown, pilgrims clutching staffs, strangers climbing steadily up the steps. They follow, calling out, but the figures never answer. At last, the mist curls low and the climbers vanish into it. When the mist clears, the steps are empty. Scientists, of course, dismiss these tales. They blame fatigue, dehydration, the strain of climbing 600 uneven steps in whipping wind. They speak of optical illusions, of mist-bending light, of the mind inventing companions in moments of exhaustion. Yet the locals shake their heads. They say the island plays tricks not by accident, but by choice. That Skellig Michael shows you what it wishes and hides what it must. The monks themselves left hints of this. In rare fragments of their writings, there are references to trials of the mind, of visions that tested them as fiercely as hunger or storm. One described climbing the steps and seeing his own younger self ascending before him, vanishing when he called out. Another wrote of standing within his hut and hearing chants echoing. Though his brothers slept, he swore he turned and saw his abbot at prayer, only to blink and find the hut empty. To live on Skellig Michael was to live within a shifting world, one where the boundary between reality and dream was perilously thin. The villagers on the mainland passed down their own warnings. They said the island was enchanted, cloaked in illusions to protect its secrets. A man might climb for hours only to find himself returned to the place where he began. Another might descend the steps and find himself on the shore, though he had taken no boat. And some, they whispered, wandered into the mist and never returned at all. Their bodies claimed not by sea, but by silence. Even today, tourists report strange sensations. Some describe time itself behaving oddly, minutes stretching into hours, or hours passing in the blink of an eye. Others speak of hearing voices on the wind, voices so clear they turn, expecting to see a guide or companion, only to find themselves alone. A few insist they touched the stone walls and felt them shift, as though the rock were breathing, as though the island itself were alive. And then there are those who do not laugh when they speak of it. They return pale, their eyes distant, their words halting. They say they saw things they cannot explain. A man swore he watched a procession of monks climb past him, their faces hidden, their chants filling the air. He followed them to the summit, but when he arrived, he was alone. A woman claimed she entered one of the huts and found it lit by fire, filled with chanting voices. When she stepped outside, the night was gone, the sun high in the sky, and no one remained. Illusion, say the scientists. Memory tricks. Exhaustion. But what if it is not illusion at all? What if Skellig Michael is not only a place of stone and sea, but a place where time folds, where past and present bleed together, where what once was still lingers like smoke in the air? The Irish have always believed in thin places. Places with a veil between worlds where it's thin, where spirits walk, where the living and the dead may meet. Skellig Michael feels like such a place. Perhaps the visions are not inventions, but glimpses, fragments of lives once lived here, echoing endlessly through the stone. Perhaps when one climbs the steps and sees figures ahead, they are not hallucinations, but monks long gone, still climbing, still praying, bound to the island even in death. And yet, not all visions are holy. Some speak of darker illusions. One tourist claimed he saw a man fall from the cliffs, heard his scream, saw his body vanish into the sea, only to learn no one had fallen that day. Another swore the steps beneath him crumbled, dropping him into the void. He awoke sprawled upon the path, uninjured, the steps intact. He fled the island, refusing to return. The locals say these illusions are the island's defense. It does not kill all who come, but confuses, misleads, frightens. It tests. Those who are meant to reach the summit do. Those who are not are turned back by visions that shatter their courage. But there is another possibility, one whispered only in hushed tones. What if the illusions are not the island's defense, but its invitation? What if the visions are not meant to drive men away, but to lure them deeper, to call them into the mist, into the silence, into the hidden chambers beneath the stone? For some do not return, and their companions swear they vanish not by storm or slip, but by simply stepping into air that swallowed them whole. The island of illusion, a place where time bends, where memory lingers, where the mind itself becomes untrustworthy, a place where one can no longer tell whether the figures ahead are strangers, ghosts, or oneself. And so the question endures. Are the visions tricks of exhaustion, or are they the true nature of the island, glimpses of what lies beyond the veil? Scientists may scoff, but those who felt the stone shift beneath their hands, who have seen figures vanish into mist, who have heard voices call their names when no one was there, they do not laugh. They do not forget, for on Skellig Michael, illusion feels real, and reality feels like illusion. Perhaps they are the same. There are places in the world that do not need stories, but they are already stories themselves. Skellig Michael is one of them. Long before filmmakers, long before modern pilgrims with cameras and boots, the island had already lived 1,000 legends. And yet, in the 20th century, the world saw it anew. When filmmakers sought a place to embody an ancient order of exiled warriors, they did not build it upon a stage. They crossed the sea and came here, to the jagged crown of Ireland, where stone huts cling to cliffs and stairways spiral upward into mist. For millions watching in darkened theaters, the island appeared like a vision from another galaxy, remote, impossible, timeless. The huts became cells of hermits guarding forgotten wisdom. The stairways became paths of initiation, each step a trial. The sea surrounding it became the barrier between the world of men and the solitude of legend. To the audience, it was fantasy. But to those who know the history of Skellig Michael, it was something more, because here, art did not create illusion. It revealed a truth long hidden. The stone cells that became the dwelling of an exiled warrior were not the invention of cinema. They had stood for centuries, built by monks who sought eternity in silence. The impossible stairways were not special effects. They were carved by hands long gone, leading higher than reason demanded. The cliffs, the storms, the isolation, all were real. The filmmakers had not built fantasy. They had only borrowed it, borrowed from an island already steeped in myth. And so the question lingers. Did art imitate the island, or did the island shape the myth long before cinema? The power of Skellig Michael lies in its duality. To one eye, it is simply geography, rock, bird, storm, sea. To another, it is a stage already prepared, a temple of mystery. The monks who came here centuries ago saw it as holy ground, a place where silence met eternity. The villagers saw it as cursed, a place guarded by shadows, where storms swallowed men whole. And now, modern eyes see it as both a place of ancient faith and otherworldly wonder. It is no coincidence that it became the image of another galaxy. It has always felt like another world, but perhaps the connection runs deeper still. Legends of exiled orders are not new. For centuries, men have told stories of warriors cast out, of hermits who withdrew from the world, of keepers of forgotten truths. And on Skellig Michael, those stories seem to live in stone. The monks were not warriors with swords, but they were warriors of silence, exiles who left behind kingdoms and lands to test themselves against sea and storm. Their huts, clustered like nests upon the peak, resemble fortresses of waiting. Their stairways resemble paths of trial. Their solitude, their visions, their whispered legends, all echo the same themes that modern fantasy has only borrowed. It is tempting to believe the filmmakers chose the island for its beauty alone. But perhaps the choice was not theirs entirely. Perhaps the island itself chose. For Skellig Michael has always drawn those who seek stories larger than themselves. Monks, pilgrims, wanderers, scholars, and now, artists. Perhaps the island does not simply inspire myth. Perhaps it generates it, shaping the imagination of all who dare approach. And if that is true, then the connection between the island and the fantasy at birth is no coincidence at all. It is inevitability. For think of it, the ancient scripts carved into hidden chambers, the visions of fiery wheels and beings of light, the storms that swallowed men, the monks who vanished without a trace. These are not inventions of modern cinema. They are the island's own history, a history already stranger than fiction. To place the story of an exiled warrior here was not to create fantasy, but to echo what had already been written in stone and silence. The villagers, of course, were unsurprised. They had long said the island was not entirely of this world, that it was a thin place where the veil between realities grew weak, where heaven and earth touched, where visions were common. To them, the idea that the island could serve as another galaxy was obvious. It had always been one. And yet, this connection carries a deeper unease. For when art and legend intertwine, they blur the line between what is real and what is imagined. Tourists now come not only to see the monastery of the monks, but to walk the path of warriors who never lived. They see fantasy and history layered atop one another, until it becomes difficult to know where one ends and the other begins. But perhaps that has always been the way of Skellig Michael, because here, illusion is truth, vision is memory, and myth is history. The fantasy connection does not weaken the island's mystery. It strengthens it. For when the world looked upon the huts and steps and cliffs through the lens of art, they saw what the monks had always seen, that this place does not belong wholly to earth. It belongs to something larger, something eternal. And so the question returns, did the filmmakers choose the island to create their vision, or had the island already prepared the vision, waiting centuries for the right eyes to see? Did art imitate Skellig Michael? Or has Skellig Michael been shaping myths since the first man laid eyes upon it? Perhaps the answer is both. For in truth, the island is not simply a location. It is a storyteller. It tells its tale through stone and sea, through silence and storm, through visions and disappearances. It tells it through monks who vanished, through steps that defy reason, through chambers that glow with runes not of this world. And now, it tells it through the silver screen, through images projected into darkness, through stories carried to millions who will never set foot on its cliffs. But no matter how the tale is told, the island remains, silent, waiting, watching. And perhaps this is a true fantasy connection, that Skellig Michael does not simply reflect our stories, but creates them, that long before cinema, long before cameras and scripts, it had already woven itself into human mind as a place of exile, a vision of trial, of mystery, that the filmmakers did not invent anything at all. They merely uncovered what was already there. Art imitates life, they say, but here, art imitated legend. And legend is stronger than life. So the next time one looks upon the huts, the stairways, the cliffs rising from endless sea, one must ask, is this a monastery, a fortress, a temple, a myth, or is it all of these at once? a place that transcends category, a place where the stories of men and the mysteries of the universe intertwine. The monks believed they lived at the edge of the world. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps they chose this island because it was not simply a rock in the sea, but a threshold, a doorway, a place where stories pass between worlds, shaping what we believe, what we imagine, what we fear. And if that is true, then Skellig Michael is not only part of our history, it is part of our future, too. For stories are never finished, and this island is not done telling its tale. There are places where time does not move forward, where the centuries pass yet nothing truly changes. Skellig Michael is one of those places. Today, as it has for over 1,000 years, it stands battered by storms, cloaked in mist, unreachable for months at a time. The sea surrounds it like a wall, the waves rising and falling in endless rhythm, as though guarding the jagged crown of stone from the world of men. It is not empty, yet it feels empty. Gulls circle above, their cries sharp against the roar of the sea. Grass clings to cracks in the stone, bending under the wind. The ancient huts still stand, their domes curve against the sky, their interiors bare, their walls cold to the touch. The stairways still spiral upward, twisting into mist. And yet, for all its silence, the island does not feel abandoned. It feels alive, watching, waiting. Tourists come now when seas allow. They take their boats across the restless Atlantic, landing on the narrow edge of rock where the monks once stepped ashore. They climb the forbidden steps, marvel at the huts, gaze across the endless horizon. They call it beautiful. They call it haunting. They take their photographs and their memories and return to the mainland. Their hearts lighter for having touched something ancient, but few stay long. Every departure feels less like choice and more like escape. For to remain too long upon Skellig Michael is to feel the weight of its silence. It is not the silence of peace, but of watchfulness. The kind of silence that presses upon the chest, that fills the ears until one hears whispers where there are none, footsteps where no one walks. The kind of silence that makes a man feel he is not alone, even when he is. It is this silence that has outlasted all things. The monks are gone, their chants faded. The storms have risen and broken. The visions have passed into legend. But the silence remains eternal, as though the island itself holds its breath. And within that silence lies the weight of mystery. For who can stand upon those steps and not wonder? What drove men to live here, to carve their lives into the teeth of the sea? Why did they abandon it? What voices did they hear in the wind? What lights did they see in the sky? Were they saints, angels, visions of God? Or were they something stranger, something the monks dare not name? The silence does not answer. It never has. It keeps its secrets as it keeps its stone huts, untouched, unbroken, waiting. The locals still whisper of it. Fishermen say the island chooses who may approach. Boats capsize without warning, waves rising against some and not against others. Climbers slip upon the steps though the stone is dry. And always, when the mist gathers, figures are seen upon the cliffs. Some say monks, some say shadows. Others refuse to say at all. Scientists explain away weather patterns, fatigue, the tricks of mist and wind. But the locals know better. They have lived with the island all their lives. They have watched its storms gather, its silence deepen, its presence loom against the horizon. To them, Skellig Michael is not geography. It is memory. It is spirit. It is something too old to be understood, too vast to be explained. And still it waits. The tourists who come often describe the same sensation upon leaving. Relief, as though a weight has lifted, as though the island has released them. They laugh about it, call it superstition, but their voices are too quick, their smiles too thin. They speak of dreams after their visit, dreams filled with waves, with chanting voices, with stairways that climb forever. Some wake in the night certain they hear the sea outside their windows, though they live far inland. Others dream of walking the steps again, only to find figures ahead of them, cloaked in mist, beckoning them onward. The eternal silence follows them home. And perhaps that is the true secret of Skellig Michael, that its silence is not confined to stone and sea. It seeps outward into the minds of those who set foot upon it. into the dreams of those who only see it from afar. It becomes part of them, part of us, whispering that there are places in this world we do not own, mysteries we cannot solve, silences we cannot break. The monks believed they were closer to heaven here. The villagers believed the island was cursed. The filmmakers believed it was the perfect place for myth. And perhaps all were right. For Skellig Michael is not one thing, but many. It is holy and cursed, beautiful and terrible, real and unreal. It is a place where opposites meet, where silence speaks louder than words, where absence feels like presence. And so it waits, guarding its secrets, daring those who dream to return. But here's the question that lingers, the one the silence seems to ask. Do we return to Skellig Michael, or does Skellig Michael return to us? Does it wait upon the horizon, patient and unchanging, or does it move within us, shaping our stories, our myths, our fears? Perhaps the island is not simply a place in sea. Perhaps it is a place in the mind, in the human heart, in the very fabric of story itself. For even when we leave it behind, it does not leave us. It endures, as it always has, battered by storms, cloaked in mist, unreachable for months at a time. And in its eternal silence lies a reminder that the world is larger than us, that mystery is older than memory, and that some places are not meant to be solved, only respected. The monks are gone. The order is silent. The tourists come and go, but the island remains, watching, waiting, whispering its story to those who listen, daring them to hear more than they should. Skellig Michael, the jagged tooth of the Atlantic, the island of silence, the eternal witness. And still it waits, as it always has, beyond the horizon, cloaked in mist, daring those who dream to return. Silence lingers over Skellig Michael, but silence is never empty. It is heavy with memory, filled with questions that echo across the centuries. The monks are gone, their voices lost of wind, yet their presence lingers in every stone, every step, every whisper of the sea. Storms still rise, shadows still move, lights still flicker above the cliffs. And though we tell ourselves the island is just rock and water, a part of us knows better. Some places are not only seen, they are felt. Perhaps that is why the island haunts those who leave it behind. Not with fear, but with wonder. A reminder that mystery has not died in our world. That there are still places where history and legend blur, where silence speaks louder than any words. Skellig Michael is one such place. It dares us to ask questions without answers, to look beyond what is known, to wonder what waits in the mist. And if you have felt it too, if this story has stayed with you, if the silence of the island still hums in your thoughts, then do not let it end here. Join this journey deeper into forgotten, the forbidden, the places where mystery lives on. There are more stories waiting, more shadows, more whispers from the past that refuse to be silent. So, step beyond the horizon with us. Like this story, if it moved you, share it so the silence spreads further. Leave your thoughts in the comments. What do you believe truly happened on Skellig Michael? And if you crave more tales of lost worlds, cursed places, and ancient mysteries that defy time, subscribe now. For this island is not the only one that waits.